Hey, what's going on, Archons? Welcome to yet another edition of Key Thoughts, Doobie-Doo Key Thoughts. Here we go. Key Thoughts, my thoughts on KeyForge this week. I know it's going to be a trending jingle on TikTok. Please do like, subscribe, share, remix, all those things you do on TikTok, as I know all my subscribers are avid TikTokers. False. I know you are not. Neither am I, but here we are talking about KeyForge yet again. And this week, I'm kind of leaning into a subject I've spoken of in the past, but I'm thinking about it in a different way. So we're going to get to that in a bit. But first, we have to do the card of the week. And this week, the card of the week comes from Dark Tidings in Star Alliance, and it is Operative Espion. For those of you who don't know, it's a 4-powered Star Alliance creature that is elusive and has an ability that says after a player raises the tide during their turn, they may use a creature they control. And that is a universal aspect that happens. And I love Operative Espion because this past week, I got a lot of use out of the card. And it wasn't even in my deck. So, hey, you love to see it, right? This card is really interesting because of what it presents being on the board, especially with the tide. So let's say, for example, the tide needs to be flipped, etc., etc. This card incentivizes flipping the tide. The deck I had happened to have a Tomwa of the Glow in it, as well as a Youngest Bear. So those two cards together provided quite a bit of utility for incentivizing me to pull the tide back in my direction, and then utilize 2 creatures, get 2 Ember, exhaust one of my opponent's creatures, and draw a card. So I mean, that for 3 chains seems like pretty good value. So yeah, I like this card for that reason. And as a result, if you do have an Operative Espion in your deck, I think you need to question sometimes, should you play that card? That's the reason why I want to talk about this. I mentioned it in my video I put out yesterday due to this way that I utilized it. But this is a great card. And Ketzer mentioned in the comments that it's kind of like Speed Sigil. You need to see that you have more things in your deck that are going to benefit from you being able to use a creature just from raising the tide. You may have other things that incentivize that, like a Mecha Buoy. You could also have the Hydro Cataloger as a great reason to a static collection array. I believe is a Star Alliance card that reduces your key cost. All these things lean into an Espion being something that incentivizes you having it pulling the tide back to you. So just keep that in mind. Are you going to get more value than this? If the value you hold strictly relies on you just getting to use a creature and there's not an ability within those creatures, you may want to think twice or look at the board in front of you if you're in a sealed and you didn't have a deck list. If you have a deck list, you can obviously see things that could burn you as a result. And if you're playing sealed, then just see what's on the board. And if at that moment it does not make sense, maybe rethink it. And I'm going to be honest, I've never thought twice about Espion. It was after this interaction this past week and seeing how my opponent's use of playing Espion actually really benefited me that I came to the conclusion that you kind of do have to take a beat and see how this card lies within your deck. Now, on to the topic of the week. This week, I wanted to talk about the idea of holding cards. Yes, I feel like I've been a broken record with this, but this week, I actually want to speak about holding a card for the psychological value it holds. The greatest, I think, representation of this concept is Too Much to Protect, because that card provides your opponent the ability to steal from you and gain Ember if you're going over. So as a result, it makes it so your opponent can get a burst from you bursting. And so you holding that can mean your opponent literally just goes to 6 every turn. Just a 6, 6, 6, 6. That's all they do. Just going to 6 Ember. The psychological aspect of that, of them holding back, not utilizing their board and reaping, etc., because you holding a card like that, I think has a lot of value. So if your opponent is worried about bursting and they're not executing that game plan, then there you have it. And holding that could hold that value. And if they decide to throw caution to the wind and be like, either you got it or you don't, and they come at you with that burst, then guess what? You have the answer. Once you play that card, you have literally said to your opponent, guess what? It's on. And they're going to start moving forward with a game plan that you may not have a response to anymore. I look at it that way. I'm cautious of those cards. I don't think I go to 6 every time. I don't mind going to 7 so that if they do have it, it could maybe incentivize them to be like, oh, I'm just holding this. I should just play it now and get the 1 ember off of it rather than just chain myself. So there's that aspect as well if you're on the other side of it. But there's other cards like board wipes, things of that nature that you may need to hold because you see your opponent doing shenanigans. And you could have that psychological effect where opponent goes, okay, if they have their board wipe and I just set up this one house that has 10 creatures and I've been archiving and waiting for this moment, and then they go, boom, wipe your board, and you're kind of like, okay, I'm starting over from scratch now. It has that effect as well. Once the board wipe's gone, they know they can move forward with impunity until you cycle. And then once you cycle, you still have to draw that card. I feel like the concept of just play and cycle into it again, it does have this nuance of, yeah, in theory, you're right. You can just cycle into it again, but you also have to draw it again. What if it ends up on the bottom of your deck? That means you're technically cycling your deck twice. So if your deck does not cycle fast, keep that in mind. I mean, if you have crazy efficiency, then this is a moot point. But if you don't, what's the point of being like, I'll cycle into it again? You may be better off holding it. And I think that needs to be questioned sometimes. Is holding the card not only for the utility, but for the psychological mind games you can play with your opponent. I mean, if you really want to get crazy with it and you got to do this IRL, you can literally just say pose a question. Am I holding the too much to protect? Do I have that gateway in my hand right now? I wonder. Just say something like that. It's fun. I mean, KeyForge doesn't really lean into that side of the game, like that gamesmanship sort of concept, but it is something that I think is fun in a more casual, friendly setting with your friends. But I do think that there is that psychological aspect to holding a card until it is much more valuable and needed. And I think that one chain, like in the example of too much to protect, if your opponent has 6, let's say 4 creatures on the board of a house, and they only reap with half of those creatures, are you actually being chained in that moment? Because they're slowing down their own game plan. So I think it's something to be thought about and pondered and considered. Now, if you're a new player to the game, the concept of not just playing out your hand and seeing and cycling, I think it's good to follow that rule still. Now, if you can recognize a situation and are able to question certain rules and guidelines that have existed within the game of KeyForge, I think you're no longer that new of a player. Rules and guidelines exist to help you get to know the game. When you can start questioning why you're doing that, you've probably reached a next level within your KeyForge journey and your understanding of the game, where you maybe don't have to follow those rules and guidelines and can start testing your own theories and your own experiences within the game. So I just wanted to bring about the psychological aspect of chaining yourself and holding a card in which it may prevent your opponent from moving forward with an idea, because I do think there is some value in that. So I'm going to leave you with that, and that's going to be all the videos for this week, ending here. We do have a Help from Future Self episode dropping tomorrow, and I'm not sure if I'm streaming this Saturday. There's currently some things going on, so if it happens, it'll kind of be like impromptu out of the blue. There's some stuff going on that I may be partaking in, not necessarily KeyForge related, but yeah. So I'm gonna just be holding off on that right now. Next Monday, I will be dropping the video that is going to be drawing the 3 winners this month for the deck giveaways and getting started on the tournament of decks, we're gonna call it. So yeah, stay tuned for that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I am super excited for this to see how it goes. It's going to be who played it better. So yeah, I'm really hoping there's like one super solid deck that all 3 players want and we can have a tournament. That'd be amazing. But But yeah, we'll see what happens. Until next time, folks, may your ember never be stolen and your keys forged promptly. Have a good one.